Well, that's a lovely sky, and it's a Lound sky, Lound wood here, just outside the village of Eakrin. June the 22nd today, in the last few hours of June the 22nd. It's been a lovely day again today, nice and warm, and the temperature is going to be quite pleasant this evening too. So I've come out just to give it at least a couple of hours, but I'm undecided where I'm going to actually site the trap, whether it'll be here on the outskirts of Lound Wood or just inside the entrance. It's more enclosed and there's going to be no breeze just inside the entrance of Lound Wood. So I've got a few minutes to decide. Well, it's still a little bit too light yet to warrant switching the bulb on, so what I'll do, in case there are some people watching this channel that are quite taken with the idea of moth trapping and maybe thinking about taking it up, I want to know what setup they would need and maybe the setup that I use. Now, mine is a homemade setup. Basically, you can buy ready built moth traps, Robinson traps, but they come at a price far too pricey for me. But I would recommend, I'm not telling anybody how to wire these up. I did wire this up myself with no problems. It was quite easy to do, but if you're not confident with electrics, get an electrician to sort it out for you. But basically you need a decent bulb, and this is the bulb of choice for most moth trappers, and it's a 125 watt mercury vapor bulb. It runs extremely hot and it runs extremely bright. Never look at it for any length of time, otherwise you won't see much for about 5 to 10 minutes. But it attracts moths like no other. You can have an actinic bulb, which is like the old strip lights that we used to have in the kitchen, or maybe people still do, I don't know. And they can be equally as effective. The advantage over an actinic moth trap to one of these is that you're more likely to be able to run an actinic bulb and set up in the comfort of your own garden. I'm lucky because I can site this in my little terrace garden, and I can site it in such a way that it doesn't go into the light from it doesn't go into anybody's bedroom. That way they've got no cause to complain should they wish to. So 125 watts mercury vapor bulb, and that is wired up to what we call a choke or a ballast. Now, because these run so hot and the electricity from the power source has to be regulated as to how much goes when this into this bulb when it fires up, so you use a choke or a ballast for that. They're quite expensive, I believe now. They were fairly dear when I bought mine, but I'm still on the original one that I've had for over 20 years now, and that's encased in this box, just a standard wooden box, and it's just to sit the light on. This is the kind of setup I like. I don't like to enclose the moths or trap the moths in, and I like to sit with the moth trap while this trap is running. So you've got your bulb and you've got your choke and your ballast, you've got your cabling. All you need now is a power source, and if you're going to run it from home, no problem, you can just plug it in your socket at home and away you go. Your garden will be lit up. Out here and at other sites where there's no power supply, you need to take your own, and that's where we need the use of a generator. And this is my generator. It's a new one. I've had it about a year now, probably approximately a year, and it's been absolutely faultless. I must admit, I had the old sort of frame style generator which weighed double this. It weighed approximately 4 stone, and I was struggling to lift it. I could lift it, but you didn't want to walk more than a couple of yards with it. This is better, much lighter. In fact, it's half the weight of the old one and runs much more quieter, and as I say, it's been no problem at all. And once you've got one of these, this will be your largest outlay of the items that I've shown. The moth trapping world is your oyster. So it's a fairly simple setup to trap moths. You just need a power source, a cable and a light, and you're off. Well, as you can see, we're up and running on this beautiful June evening. One of the joys of trapping during the summer is obviously the warmer temperatures. Warmer temperatures mean more moths and more species, but it's been a very poor year and remains a poor year. But one of the things I like about trapping this time of year is the fact that the sky never gets completely dark during midsummer. Even though it may appear to, there's always that element of twilight, of dark blue twilight, which creeps across the northern horizon during the night. And no sooner has it got quite dark than it starts to get quite light again. But it's very nice. It's a lovely time of the year, and one of my favourite times of the day is actually about 2 o'clock in the morning during the summer on a beautiful warm summer's night. It's stunning. Hopefully the moths coming in tonight will be stunning. It remains to be seen, but that scene is set. Well, we're about half an hour in and it's quiet. There's a few moths coming in. It's more micros, funnily enough, than macros, which is nice to see, but it's just singles of everything at the moment. But it's still very early days. So we've had a few bits come in. Probably the best thing, although not rare, is a migrant moth, and it's a diamondback moth and Protella xylostella. Always nice to get a migrant, even though it was probably born here, this one. It looks very fresh, but we'll see what comes in. It's a lovely night though. I can't show you anything at the moment because, to be quite honest, after an hour of trapping, very little has come in. We've not got a bad species list, but there's just only odds, ones and twos of most of the species that's on the list, and there's as many micros as there are micros. Perhaps the best thing that has come in is a good number of small tortrix with a very long name. I might have to refer to my notes because it's a long time since I've read it, but it's Pseudargyratosa conwagna. Fabulous name, but an absolute fabulous little moth. I'll put some photos in because it really is an absolute gem. And I say gem for a reason, because there are some blue spotting on this moth, quite haphazard but numerous spots. It's a very variable moth, and some specimens are better looking than others, but these spots are of blue, almost look like sapphires on an orangey or yellowish background. It's a very, very attractive little tortrix, it really is. And I remember a few years ago they were everywhere and in huge numbers. I had lots in the garden, incredible numbers. And now they've been quiet. I don't think I've trapped one for a year or two, but I've had 4 or 5 tonight. Apart from that, note, very, very disappointing so far. So we'll see how things go in this second hour, but at the moment I wouldn't think that it was June if I was just plonked here and someone said, what time of year is it? If it wasn't for the vegetation, I certainly wouldn't say June. Now that notebook isn't the notebook you would expect going into the 4th week of June. We're now into the peak season for moths. This is the few weeks or couple of months that we all look forward to during the winter months. And you know, those of us that trap during the winter months, you're always thinking ahead to those warmer nights and those heady nights, large numbers of species and lots of moths. Looking at this sheet and the activity around that light, you'll see how poor it is, and I can't see how suddenly we're going to have an explosion of moths. I really can't see that. We will get to more species, but I think we're going to get to low numbers of those species, at least for the next month or 6 or 7 weeks. Maybe things might be different in the autumn, because obviously the number of adult moths is completely affected by the weather when the larvae or eggs or pupa of those moths were around. I think it's going to take a while, maybe say a couple of years, before we might get back to normality. That's provided we get normal or typical British weather. The hot weather and the prolonged hot and dry sunny weather of 2022 is obviously still having an effect. And we had another hot period in 2023, but not as prolonged as 2022's. And then of course the back end of 2023 in the UK was very wet. It didn't know when to stop raining, and indeed on most days it didn't. Very, very wet. So it's no wonder things have been affected, and other insects will have been affected in much the same degree as our moths have. And they're going to take time for populations to get back to anywhere near where they should be. But there are so few moths flying in and flying around. Barred yellow has just come in. But it is cool that it's 12 centigrade. It doesn't feel like a June night. Most disappointing and rather worrying at the same time. Well, 2 hours up, and I don't think it's worth stopping any longer. So we try again in another couple of days. Are things going to improve? It makes you wonder. But now it's off with the light time and finish packing up and heading for home. Well, I'm just about to head for home. I've locked the gate behind me and I'm just sat having 5 minutes with the moon. A beautiful picture. Probably doesn't come over as a beautiful on screen, but it's very, very nice. I do love the night. That's part of what gets me out moth trapping. I like that isolation. And this is just beautiful. A lovely moment before I set off. Shame the trapping wasn't so good as this view.